Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P. Joe Pisapia. It's week 12. The big buys are hitting us hard, and we are trying to stay alive on our route to another championship. Welcome in, everybody. And, of course, joining us every single Monday on the show, DBRO, Derek Brown, the King of Bros, and, of course, my patty cakes, Pat Fitzmaurice. We're going to look at some guys who might still be on the waiver wire that can help you during these difficult times of bye weeks. Week 12 is going to be a pain in the ass, and week 14 probably even worse. So get ready, kids. It's time to build some depth on those rosters. Before we do, last night, a very entertaining game. The Chargers every single week starting to look a little bit less like the Chargers of old, Pat. Now, they did kind of collapse a little bit there. Joe Burrow and company made this really interesting. But what do you think of last night's performance of the Chargers, kind of shaking the dust off of the, same old Chargers moniker that they've been living with so many years now?
The Chargers have become a really fun watch, Joe, and they were not early in the season. Over the first 4 weeks, I think Justin Herbert averaged, 155 passing yards a game, and now Justin Herbert is absolutely dealing and occasionally running opportunistically. It's made for a lot of startable assets in this offense. Like Herbert's now startable again after he was just unplayable early in the year. Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey has just turned into a horse. Will Dissly, J.K. Dobbins, who J.K. Dobbins looked like he was shot out of a cannon on his 1-yard touchdown dive. Like they give a couple of carries to Hassan Haskins, and then Dobbins is like, all right, let me just take care of business here. And I couldn't believe the height he got on that jump. Apparently the Achilles is not bothering him anymore.
Yeah, T. Higgins, a nice performance from him last night for us. We've waited all these weeks for T. Higgins, and great, now they're on a bye. Terrific, way to go. So annoying. Anyway, also a bit of news before we came on to the show today.
Oh, dear.
DBRO, looks like Daniel Jones no longer going to be the quarterback, at least for this coming week here for the New York Giants. But it's not Drew Lock. It's my boy, Tommy DeVito. How you doing? Let's go. I mean, DBRO, what does this mean to the fantasy assets on the New York Giants now that Tommy D is back at under center for the Giants?
I mean, I don't think it's any worse than Drew Lock. This is just Tommy insuring the tank, baby. That's all this is. The Giants are saying we want to have a high pick, and maybe Drew Lock could screw that up for us. But we know what we got in Tommy D. So that's all I take out of this, man. Giants just want a high pick. Go actually get a functional quarterback, hopefully, in the draft.
Man, Tommy Cutlets, baby. I'm going to have some chicken cutlets watch the New York Football Giants and my boy Tommy DeVito. Let's go. All right, let's get to the waiver wire pickup of the week before we do free stuff. So we've given away a lot of trophy smack swag over this season, and another championship belt is in the mail. This one is going to Old and Bitter. And no, that's not me. It's actually another user here. Okay. I know you would think it's my burner account, but it's not. But congratulations to Old and Bitter. Finally, something's gone your way. Maybe you'll change your tune and maybe you'll change your screen name. Please get in touch with us, Old and Bitter, over at DerekBrownsOnlyFans.com. No, I'm sorry, that's not it. At mailbag@FantasyPros.com. Again, mailbag@FantasyPros.com. Give us your mailing address, your proof of your subscription to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, and we'll get that shipped out to you right away. Again, Old and Bitter, congratulations. Something is finally gone right. Now, with one Trophy Smack giveaway going away, another one appears. So the Trophy Smack Large Fantasy Wall Smack is back. And if you want to win this large fantasy football wall smack of your choosing, the magnetic metal wall plaques aren't just for the statement pieces. They let everybody know your real passion is fantasy football and you don't care about much else. The wall smack is the perfect addition for any fan cave. Enter to win by subscribing to our YouTube channel, ringing the bell till it goes ding, and dropping comments below on this video. Just like Old and Bitter, you could win the next Trophy Smack giveaway. All right, let us begin here with the waiver wire pickup of the week, and we're going back and forth on this one, but I think long-term rest of season, the best investment we can make is Christian Watson. Now, Christian Watson sometimes feels like he is, in witness protection over the years where, you're just looking for him, he exists somewhere, and the last 2 weeks, things are starting to go in a better way for him. Touchdown 2 weeks ago when we saw him. Yesterday against the Bears, 4 receptions for 150 yards. So you're seeing the explosiveness. And Pat, I think more to the point, we're starting to look ahead here. And maybe, just maybe, we're seeing Love and Watson healthy together for the first time. I don't know, in a while at the very least. So what's your thoughts, Pat, on Christian Watson going forward? You are Mr. Packer. Give us the 411.
Yeah, I don't want to steal too much of DBRO's thunder, and it would have been tragic. I mean, you made DBRO laugh and choke a second ago, Joe, and if we
I
would
might
have
have
lost,
monster in my lungs.
if we would have lost DBRO before he got to wax poetic about Christian Watson, that would have been completely tragic.
Yeah.
But so I do feel like there is sort of a wheel of randomness we're spinning with the Packers pass catchers every week, because some weeks you get your Jaden Reed weeks, and Romeo Doubs is more involved some weeks than others, and then Dontavian Wicks will pop in with a big game, or Tucker Kraft. The thing is, like, Watson has big play capability. Maybe those other guys don't have, or at least, I don't know. Reed has catch and run capability, but Watson can be a vertical threat. There was a play yesterday where Watson was getting bracketed deep downfield, and Jordan Love just threw it up and put it in a place where his guy could make a play. Watson made a play and came down with a really tough catch. He had that spectacular diving catch where he gets up and keeps running. So yeah, I mean, big and fast, and he can do it in multiple ways. I think his longest touchdown of 2023 was a quick slant where he turned on the jets and turned the corner and took it to the house. So really exciting, but you have to live with the possibility that you are going to get the 3-target, 2-catch for 34-yard game.
Yeah, quick correction by me too. He did not have a touchdown in that game against Detroit. But coming off the bye here, 4 of 4 for 150. Looking at the schedule ahead, San Francisco, Miami, Detroit, and then in the playoffs, you get Seattle, New Orleans those first 2 weeks. Those are some fun matches for a guy with the skill set of Christian Watson. I think that's the point that I want to drive home to people today. And DBRO, this is a guy who is, in terms of rest of season rank, outside the top 50 wide receivers. He is 49% rostered on Sleeper. So what are your thoughts? The Thunder was promised, so why don't you give it to me?
Dude, he could be the guy you're starting as your wide receiver 3 or flex that could bring you home to a title just for the exact reasons you just mentioned. His schedule weeks 15, 16, and 17. He gets Seattle, New Orleans, and Minnesota. Find a tough spot. Find a secondary you don't like, that you don't want to target. And I know Minnesota's been good versus the blitz and applying pressure and stuff. Those corners still can't handle speed. And Watson balled out. I mean, come on, man. Like, look at what he did yesterday against a tougher Bears. We can talk about the Bears situation and that locker room and all.
Oh no,
that
the secondary's got talent.
That secondary is still talented. The defense is still talented, and Watson made them all look like they were junior high school players. Like that catch that. And Fitzy texted me. He said, "Did you just see the catch that Watson made?" And I was like, I was actually like doing dishes in the middle of the kitchen, and I was like, "Wait a minute, hold on." And I had it on the split screen on the TV, zone? And I was like, "Holy crap!" I was like, I go to pull it up, and I was like, "Oh."
Yeah, he's an impressive talent, impressive player. Man. And he's passed us by. Another important part here as we're looking ahead to weeks 12 and 14 specifically. So again, in terms of long-term investment, this is the guy I think we should go after. Now, we'd be remiss if we did not mention the performance yesterday of Taysom Hill, because it was a performance. A streaming guy that we talked about a lot on the shows this past week, and I had in a DFS lineup or two, just kind of trying to pay down and find somebody at tight end. But let's go through this day for him. 10 targets, 8 receptions for 50 yards, and then 130 on the ground with 3 touchdowns. I mean, it was insane. Now, here's the thing. He's on a bye this week. So that becomes the question of, do we buy what we saw last week? We know the Taysom Hill storyline sometimes can be these big explosive games, and then other times, it is anything but that. What's interesting this time around is the lack of other competition for touching the football. So DBRO, as a Saints guy, just curiosity, you've seen probably more Taysom Hill than a lot of us. Where are you at here with Taysom Hill in terms of how you approach him this week, because you can't use him? So in terms of using your fab and trying to stay relevant, and then also what the future really looks like. Is this the new Weapon X here going forward, or is this just a really fun game against the Cleveland Browns defense that just looked all kinds of confused against him?
He could be, and I'm not saying that because this is a legendary performance. Let's call this what it is, guys.
Unrepeatable. Can we drive that home? Unrepeatable.
Yeah, unrepeatable. And this is arguably, I mean, if we were to put the Mount Rushmore of like fantasy performances, this has to be in the conversation for honorable mention. Maybe it doesn't make the final 3, final 4 and stuff like that.
Well, of this
But
season,
dude,
sure.
I
Of this
mean,
season, it's a fun line. There's no doubt about it.
He had it because not only like everything you rattled off, Joe, Taysom Hill also had a 37% target share. He had a touch or a target on 52% of his snaps. So if he was on the field, he was getting the ball some way. And the upcoming schedule, like the Saints, like you talked about, they have MVS and they have Kamara. Who the hell else? Like, we don't know if you see Chris Olave for the rest of the season. They have the Rams, the Giants, the Commanders, the Packers, the Raiders, and the Bucks. All of those are going to be competitive games, or the Saints are going to be trailing. I'm not telling you Taysom Hill is going to get this type of usage moving forward every single freaking week, but come on. Between the three of us, we're going to all be ranking him as what? A top 8 tight end rest of season?
Probably.
Maybe higher, depending on.
And tight end's been such a wasteland all year, Pat, that I kind of understand why people might, at a desperation, like even if you say you finally got Evan Ingram back, right? Like you were waiting all that time, you got Evan Ingram back, and then Trevor Lawrence gets hurt. And you're just looking around going, I can't catch a break at the tight end position. So is this the break that everyone's been waiting to catch?
We're not going to ding Taysom for his fumble and interception yesterday. I mean, no, just kidding.
I guess we are. I guess you just did.
Yes, I guess we are.
Yeah. So, on one of the shows last week, I referred to Taysom Hill as the funeral home director because the more tragic the circumstances, the better it is for business for Taysom Hill. And the Saints had this nice pair of wide receivers with Chris.
This show got real dark, Pat.
Dude, when Pat brought it up last week, I was like, oh my God, it works.
Well, I mean, the Saints had this really nice pair of receivers with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed, season-ending injury. Olave out indefinitely with the concussion. And like this shortage of weaponry, it's basically Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill at this point. The Saints and the occasional shot play to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, I guess. But like 8 targets, career high, 7 catches, career high. And then all the rushing, and he'll occasionally throw a pass. I mean, like, it doesn't really matter the matchup because he has all these different ways that he can accumulate fantasy points. So, I mean, yeah, he looks like he's going to be a top 10, if not top 5 receiver or tight end going forward.
I mean, straight up, guys, who do you want rest of season? Mark Andrews or Taysom Hill?
Taysom.
Yeah.
David Njoku or Taysom Hill?
Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
Tucker Kraft or Taysom Hill?
Hill.
I mean, that's the line. So, like, we're talking about tight end 5, tight end 6.
I mean,
rest of season.
Probably the only guys you start over him without question are Kelsey, Bowers, and Kittle. That's it.
And I think Cade Otton is somewhere in that conversation.
Maybe I would start Otton though. Otton's been tremendous, and Godwin's gone. So again, those intermediate passes have all gone to Cade Otton. So
tight end 6 rest of season. That's insane.
All right. Before we get to some of the running backs again, a little dark out in the running back streets this week. Not a whole lot of names to talk about, but a ton of wide receivers I want to talk about. So we got a lot to get to in this show. Pat, before we do all of that, real quick, when you were watching that Packers game, I want to go back to the Packers game for a second. How much did you chuckle at the end on that field goal when it was blocked at the end? Like, what was Pat Fitzmaurice's reaction to that as it happened?
Yeah, a couple high fives with my teenage son. He was pretty happy because, we're in the Chicago suburbs and most of his friends are Bears fans. So he was pretty delighted by it too. Yeah, I mean, it's just like I remember a time when the Packers were this snake bitten against the Bears, but this was a long time ago, back in the prehistoric times when I was young. And now, I mean, it's just the Bears outplayed the Packers. Packers did not deserve to win that game, and just nothing goes right for the Bears in the series anymore.
No, I imagine it's like a villainous chuckle from Pat Fitzmaurice. Just
pretty much.
Clank, just drinking, throwing one back here. And if you are having a good time watching football, hanging out with friends, maybe you should throw a little money on the game there and have some fun because the NFL season continues to roll and contenders are separating from the pack. The one thing that hasn't changed this season is DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the number one place to bet touchdowns. That's right. If you want to get into the betting space, touchdowns is a very easy way to do it. You can just trail me every week and keep betting Jalen Hurts to score a touchdown because that just keeps making money every single week. So you should check us out at Betting Pros and at Out of Bounds. And if you want to score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns, all you have to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use the promo code FantasyPros, that's one word, FantasyPros. New customers get 150 in bonus bets. If you bet wins, then you bet just $5 on there. Only on DraftKings, you get 150 in bonus bets. That sounds pretty good. Again, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Let's get to the running back position here. Not too much to stick around with here. Trey Benson, I want to bring up again. The roster percentage didn't move. We talked about him last week, as Pat loves to affectionately mention the stuffing and cuffing season. Well, he's 31% rostered on Sleeper. He's still available in 70% of leagues. He is one of the better upside guys if anything should happen to Connor, or maybe at some point, maybe they start looking to the future, because that's also possible here for Arizona. They're right in the thick of this division, so they are going to be fighting tooth and nail, especially after, oh my God, I can't wait for Out of Bounds today with Welsh. He's going to be so upset. Oh, it's going to be such a fun show to do. He's going to be so miserable after his 49ers lost to Geno Smith and the Seahawks. But Trey Benson, want to remind everybody, that's another guy that roster percentage should be higher. If you have Connor, he's an absolute must. Pat, you were also mentioning about Tank Bigsby being out there. I know he was out this past week. He is 54% rostered on Sleeper, but you say on Yahoo he is still kind of under rostered in your opinion.
Yeah, only 49%. And I know a lot of people will roll their eyes and say that, Tank Bigsby would never be available in their league, but there are some short bench leagues and some 10-teamers where Tank might be out there. And I think we saw yesterday against the Lions, and granted, it was a tough matchup with a very negative game script, but Travis Etienne is just not the Travis Etienne of a couple of years ago. And we have seen Tank Bigsby clearly be the better runner, at least on early downs. And Bigsby is going to come back. I think he's going to get that job. And from week 14 to week 17, the Jaguars have the Titans, the Jets, the Raiders, and the Titans again. Titans aren't a bad matchup in the running game, but the key thing is all those games are games that the Jaguars should at least be in. Those are all non-competitive teams, so maybe it won't be an overwhelmingly negative game script, which obviously you don't want with Tank because he doesn't catch passes. But I wouldn't be surprised if the way the Jaguars are just playing out the string, if we see 20 carries a game from Tank every week down the stretch.
When the trade deadline happened, I know some people thought, well, Khalil Herbert's getting moved, and maybe that's a guy I want to pick up and add. DBRO, that's a guy we could drop at this point if Eddie wants to hold on to him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in deeper leagues, you could still hold him, because the thing about it with Chase Brown, if anything were to happen to him, Khalil Herbert would be, he would be a bell cow. He'd be getting the usage of Chase Brown because they literally have nobody else. So I think in that instance, you hold him, but in most of your 10 and 12 team leagues, yeah, drop him. It's fine.
All right, so we're going to continue on to find some of the names that you need to add to all of your rosters. Another thing you need to add to your lawn here is some Scots, because did you know that feeding your lawn regularly builds a stronger, more resilient lawn that naturally crowds out weeds? Scott's Turf Builder products provide year-round feeding with essential seasonal solutions for your lawn, and Scott's has a subscription plan that makes caring for your lawn even easier. They put expertise to work by analyzing the location, size, and condition of your lawn to create a custom plan for your yard, and then they'll ship you the right product to apply at the perfect time. By answering only a few short questions about your lawn, Scott's experts will craft the program that's right for you and your yard. So visit scotts.com right now to learn more. Again, that's scotts.com. Feed your lawn. Feed it. All right, let's feed up some wide receivers into our rosters. Let's do that. Elijah Moore, 18% roster. This was a guy that you picked on the stream yesterday a few times, and DBRO, you nailed this one. So what'd you see yesterday out of Elijah Moore? I know Judy had a big game too, despite the fact that the Browns were underwhelming, to say the least, against the Saints.
Jameis Winston giving life to all the fantasy options in this offense, man. The pass catchers, I mean, Elijah Moore, we're seeing a lot of the promise of why we loved him going into his sophomore season. And in 2 of the next 3 weeks, I know that people look at the Steelers as being a terrible matchup. They are not for slot wide receivers. So I think Elijah Moore could stay on the heater. Pittsburgh's allowed since week 5, Pittsburgh has allowed the 11th most fantasy points per game and the 6th most receiving yards per game to opposing slot wide receivers. So I know people are facing tough weeks, like especially this week with so many teams on bye and a lot of these options you picked up off the waiver wire. Elijah Moore is probably out there in so many different leagues. And this week, he is a very strong flex play and probably a really good wide receiver 3 for your team.
All right, Pat, anything to add here with Elijah Moore? I know between Tillman and Moore and Judy, it's kind of a tough wide receiver group to pin down. Do you have a ranking of the three of those guys that you like rest of season in your mind?
Right now, I'd probably Judy and Tillman and Elijah Moore just a tick behind, but Moore might actually be the safest week to week because DBRO mentioned it,
A
like
floor.
Pittsburgh
Yeah.
can be had in the slot. They've got Denver coming up, and you know that Elijah Moore is not going to be the one catching the shadow from Patrick Surtain Jr. They've got Kansas City coming up. Chiefs very tough against perimeter receivers, not so tough against the slot. So
Mhm.
all these guys are getting targets with Jameis Winston, the Rainmaker, and maybe Elijah Moore maybe has the highest floor out of all these guys.
All right. Speaking of the Broncos, Bo Nix has played pretty good football the last couple weeks. Again,
Yep.
I just keep watching it, and maybe Sean Payton isn't out of touch with the NFL, and maybe they knew what they were doing when they got Bo Nix because they've been pretty good. There's a piece though. There's actually two wide receivers I'm going to talk about. First one's on Denver though. Devaughn Vele, who is just 5% rostered over on Sleeper. But I want to bring this up in those deeper leagues because I was surprised that number was actually so low. I don't know if it's going to be so low after this week. And the last 2 weeks specifically, against Kansas City, 4 targets, 4 receptions for 39 yards, but he had the touchdown. Yesterday against Atlanta, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 66 yards, no touchdown. But starting to, it seems like carve out a role for himself. Pat, Vele has the Las Vegas Raiders and the Cleveland Browns the next 2 weeks here before the bye. Any interest in him in deeper leagues? Because it feels like it's a guy that might be streamable in PPR formats.
Deeper leagues, yeah, might have some low level flex value in those types of formats. I do think for the most part it's sort of Cortland Sutton and an ensemble cast of pass catchers here. They get little Jordan Humphrey involved. They get Marvin Mims involved. So yeah, like hard to really hang your hat on the value of Devaughn Vele, but in bigger leagues there might be a little bit of value. He's really interesting as a dynasty asset, though. It seems like he's a player on the come.
All right. Jalen Coker, a guy we mentioned last week, we said, hey, maybe you want to slide
Mhm.
this guy through the waiver wire. Well, that seems to have fallen on deaf ears because he is still just 5% rostered as well. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And I know some people had to drop him this week in order to get more bodies in their rosters. Now, that's on Yahoo in terms of that roster percentage. But Debro, when you are looking ahead on the schedule here for the Carolina Panthers, who have played better of late, I know that roster percentage on Yahoo is
Mhm.
still very low. On Sleeper, just for comparison, it's at 9%. So again, he's pretty much out there to be
Still too
had.
low.
What have you seen in some of these deeper stats as you start to do some research about Coker and why he might be interesting down the stretch?
I mean, dude, he's making my top 5 pickups for the week. I freaking love him. And I know this isn't new analysis for anybody that's been tuning into the shows, but for everybody, just hear me out here. Last week, we saw Jalen Coker play. The last game we saw him before the bye, 32% target share. He had almost 50% of the air yards, almost a 37% first read share. This is all, and we need to get past the, okay, he was undrafted and trying to besmirch this. He is out targeting by a large margin Xavier Legette over multiple weeks, especially in the last game that we just saw. And so moving forward over the next 2 weeks, his matchups are amazing. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Buccaneers are both bottom 3 versus the slot. They've given up the second and third most fantasy points per game to slot wide receivers. Jalen Coker is a player that is going to be on that fringe border of wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 territory over the next 2 weeks. And I think he's going to continue to get volume. And Pat brought this up before we turn the mics on about Adam Thielen's return. I do think he comes back. The way that I'm projecting that is I think Thielen is going to play the outside. I think he's going to play the perimeter. Maybe they move Coker and it's a 50-50 role, but I still think he's going to get most of the slot snaps. So I think all of this analysis as far as him versus the slot and the good matchups, I do think it's sticky.
Now, Jalen McMillan is rostered in 23% of leagues. Another guy that's kind of, still floating out there. A guy I like coming into the season. I don't know if it's, you know, he didn't do as much as I thought he might be able to because it just became so clear it was Godwin and Evans and everybody else was just a non-factor. Then the injuries happened and McMillan's had some, moments, but really not the big exposure. Do you think here coming out of the bye that changes, Debro?
I do. I mean, look, the Buccaneers it's been held together by paper mache and duct tape, man, like a chewed bubble gum, like their passing attack. It's been Cade Otton and checkdowns to Bucky Irving and Rashad White. They need another receiving option to step up. Again, because Pete, we keep getting these questions. I don't know when Mike Evans comes back. No, you don't need to be trading for him. We don't have a clue if we're going to see a healthy version of him for the rest of the regular season. So Jalen McMillan, and the matchups are awesome, guys. Like, which one of these next 3 games are you worried about the secondary? The New York Giants? The Carolina Panthers? No way. No. The Las Vegas Raiders? Hell no. So McMillan could be the guy where you add him for $1 or $2 off of the waiver wire this week, and he could be that strong flex play over the next 3 weeks.
Pat, let's talk about 2 guys that I know we discussed a lot in previous shows. In fact, last week, one of them was the waiver wire ad of the week. I don't know why people still haven't added him. I don't know what's going on. Quentin Johnston against the Bengals was such a lock start for me. Like, I just didn't understand why people didn't see that as much. But clearly, they didn't. Yahoo, 41% rostered. On Sleeper, it's up to 59, so okay. But if you're in Yahoo leagues, the fact that this guy's floating out there, I think, is kind of absurd. And then there's Wan'Dale Robinson, who's also under 50% roster on Yahoo. On Sleeper, he's up to 64. I couldn't believe that Wan'Dale was more roster than Quentin Johnston. I thought there was such a monstrous fail overall in terms of people making waiver wire ads. But now that Tommy DeVito is taking over, I know the matchup on paper is really good. But Pat, what do you think about Wan'Dale? Is he still a guy that should be rostered as much as he is, or a guy that you feel good about even throwing out there this week?
I don't know. Well, I don't think DeVito hurts him. I don't know if DeVito necessarily helps his value a lot. I just think Wan'Dale's kind of the same, the PPR fast food guy. Not a lot of nutritional value, but can be satisfying with those 6 or 7 catches for 40 yards, like 7 yards a catch or whatever. So there is certainly a floor with Wan'Dale, and I think that's intact. And QJ, Joe, I'm with you. I mean, QJ
what's going on? Come on, people, what are you seeing?
I know, and he's become such a big playmaker. And the thing is, like, now that the Chargers have sort of loosened the reins of Justin Herbert and are throwing more, like, he pretty reliably gives you 1 big play a game at least. And so the floor has risen for Quentin Johnston, and he's still got that, spectacular Sistine Chapel ceiling that he can give you if he gets in the end zone and maybe hits on a big one.
Well, and the thing that I think people are going to miss with QJ too, when they just look at the box score and they see 2 receptions for 48 and they say, oh, it's just the same old Quentin Johnston. It's either hit or dude, he got 8 targets. He had a 22% target share in this game. So don't let just like the quick box score analysis or fantasy point analysis shove you away from the fact that this man earned a lot more volume in last week.
Yeah, and again, the more targets he's seeing, the more opportunity he has for those big plays that Pat's talking about. You know what I need for Christmas, though? I need the Pat Fitzmaurice metaphor of the day calendar.
Dude,
that's what I need.
We need to make we need to talk to the social team. We need a cut up for all these quips from Pat for the entire year. It's gold, dude.
I want to put it on the shop, on the FantasyPros shop, the Pat Fitzmaurice metaphor of the day calendar. I think it would sell.
Taysom Hill funeral director, like, dude,
it's so good. All right, let's talk about maybe some traps of the week. Kendrick Bourne, 3% rostered, had a day, but again, you never know what's going on with the Patriots wide receivers. Pat, let's start there. I know buys are going to be tough, but despite the fact that Tyquan Thornton was released over the weekend, any love for Kendrick Bourne or chasing this?
No. I mean, at best 3A or 3B on the target pecking order behind Hunter Henry, Demario Douglas, and maybe like tied with Kayshon Boutte. So not a lot of interest.
Boutte's the interesting one to me long term, because I think that guy's got a lot of talent. So maybe you can harness that. They still need a real true alpha dog in that offense if they're going to do anything serious. Now, a guy we did talk about last week that I was kind of scolded about. I said, look, he's got a touchdown in 4 straight games. Why does nobody want him? Stop it. No, nobody wants it, right?
Here we go.
Now, he had another touchdown here and 117 yards. And I know it's not always pretty. I know the Titans are not good.
98-yard reception for a touchdown. Joey.
I know, 98. But we can't.
98.
We can't just sit here to ourselves and say, well, we love the upside playmaking ability and the splash games of Quentin Johnston, and then go, well, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is just floating around the waiver wire too, and is going to cost you nothing. I'm talking about streamers for week 12. He plays the Houston Texans this week. Streamers for week 14, though, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, that's a good matchup no matter who's under center. Okay. So, I know it's a bit of
I get it. That's a good point.
7% rostered. I like touchdowns, especially in those half PPR formats, too. If he's out there in a standard league, and look, man, I know it's hard to generate a weekly basis value on touchdowns, but he is scoring a lot of touchdowns. And that's something right now, if you're looking over the last few weeks, again, I'm talking about streamers now. I'm not talking about like great waiver wire ads. He's not the waiver wire ad of the week. So any change of tune at all or softening on Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, DBRO, I'll put it to you.
Fine, you can stream him versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's all you're getting on me, Joe.
I'll get him now.
That's all you're getting. That's all you're getting.
All right. Speaking of big play streamers for touchdowns, let's go back to Marquez Valdes-Scantling again, because why? We have to. Because there's nobody else really floating around there for the Saints except Taysom Hill. The stat line again, last week, 3 catches for 109, 2 touchdowns. This week, 2 catches for 87 and a touchdown. So DBRO, Marquez Valdes-Scantling also on a bye this week. Roster percentage for him, just 35%. So people were not buying it. And there's a chance they're still not going to buy it now because they can't use him this week. So do you want to slide him through the waiver wire?
I do. And we talked about this. I talked about this in the primer, talked about this on multiple shows, and we're going to bring it up again. We keep saying, like I'm saying, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine can't keep doing this. Everybody is saying there's no way that MVS can keep doing this. And I'm telling you, there's a path for him to keep doing this, because after the bye, they get the Rams and the Giants. They've allowed the 5th most and the 6th most deep passing yards per game this season. So I'm not telling you it's going to be pretty. I'm not telling you you're going to feel good about it. Yes, there's a low floor, but MVS could continue the hot streak coming out of the bye.
Pat, number 1 wide receiver last 2 weeks, Jamar Chase, followed by Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 3, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, 37 fantasy points. I mean,
as a Packers fan, he's got like, yeah, I've seen this before. No way.
What's he averaging?
40 and a half PPR.
7 points per catch or something like that over the last couple weeks. I mean, it's been insane.
I mean, yeah, got more. I think probably more if you do the math. In full point, forget full point. In half point PPR, he is number 3 or 40 points, 20 fantasy points per game he's averaging over the last 2 weeks. I mean, that's hard to ignore.
He's got 40 total fantasy points over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, well then I can easily tell you, because he has 5 receptions. That's 8 points per reception. Just, mental napkin math.
Are you adding in the touchdowns? Boy, wait, are you adding in the touchdowns to that math? That's the thing. You got to add the touchdowns.
I'm just going off the total fantasy points that you gave me.
Yeah, so, okay, right. Yeah. All right.
For what it's worth, coming out of the bye, I would rather start MVS than, like, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, Devaughn Vele. He's going to get a couple of those deep plays. There's always the chance you get 0 or 1 point out of him, but if Carr can connect on 1 or 2 of those shots, you've got a usable game.
Over those same last 2 weeks, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, wide receiver 15. How you doing? Look at that. Just want to depress you further. All right, speaking of depressing you all, Diontae Johnson. Pat? Is it the reaction from Pat? I hope you're watching on the YouTube channel. If you're just listening, it did not do it justice. You could feel it, hopefully, through the airwaves, but to see it live in person, the reaction when I brought up Diontae Johnson, the pain and agony of Pat Fitzmaurice. I can't wait to see what metaphor you come up with this one. Are you dropping him at this point? Like, have you had it? Is it over? Is it done? Because there's been guys passing through this waiver wire that you say, well, I can't drop Diontae Johnson for him. And you've missed out on some talent. So what do you do now?
I'm dropping him. I'm just baffled by how slow the onboarding of Diontae Johnson has been in the Ravens offense. Like, you would have thought by now he'd be getting 7 or 8 targets a game. And like, he's still filling out the HR paperwork and figuring out where the team cafeteria is. Like, this is all, he had this sweet revenge game spot against the Steelers where like Tomlin was even throwing shade at him in the run up to the game. Like, what he worried about Diontae Johnson doing against him. And he's like, I haven't seen really anything on him on film, so I don't know, or whatever. I forget what the Tomlin quote was, but it was not very complimentary. And sure enough, he has almost 0 role against the Steelers in week 11.
Tomlin went wrong, man. And for everybody that has Diontae Johnson that's still considering like pushing back against Pat, let's just throw this out here. Mike Williams has been on the Steelers for less time than Diontae has been on the Ravens. He played 25 snaps yesterday. Diontae Johnson, 11 snaps, 6 routes. Drop him.
All right, I got to ask you this. What's a longer delay, D-Bro? The Diontae Johnson onboarding to the Ravens offense, or you trying to onboard a plane to CB this August for Flex Play? Was that Spirit or Southwest? I don't remember what airline.
Oh,
it was.
no, that was American.
It was American. Oh, geez.
Ruining
Ew.
my trip. Yes.
12 hours of delays.
I mean, to be honest, Joe, both of those had been a failure to launch. So, I mean, you're not wrong.
At least your bags got to New York. That was the funniest part. Your bags got to. T-Bro's
got there.
How did my bags get to New York, but I can't get to New York? Wait, I don't understand.
And I was told the plane never took off. But yeah, sure thing.
It just took off without you. All right, let's talk about some streamers that might take off. Look at that transition. In week 12 of the NFL. D-Bro, let's start with you. And let's start with a quarterback who is still under 50% rostered. How is this possible?
Well, I'm going to recommend Bo Nix going against the Las Vegas Raiders, owning the L as well as I talk about him. Yeah, Sean Payton was right. I was wrong. Bo Nix is a fantastic streamer if he's out there. Las Vegas since week 5 has allowed the 10th most passing touchdowns, 11th highest passer rating, and Bo Nix just keeps getting it done, man.
Since week 8, Bo Nix QB 4 in fantasy points. Look at that. Man. Unbelievable. Look at Bo Nix go. And the Raiders this week. Fantastic.
Broncos have hope for future.
They do. Fitzy, how about you? Streaming QB for week 12.
Yeah, Nix is clearly the target if he's available, but a guy who's widely available in leagues, only 14% rostered on Yahoo, Drake May. And I know the matchup against Miami is not ideal this week, but May is the rushing helps raise the floor with him. He's averaging 41.3 rushing yards per game, and he's been pretty competent as a passer too. So I think he's playable this week against the Dolphins.
Pat, let's go to tight end because you've got a guy that I actually just did a video on who people might not realize has finished as a tight end 1 the last 2 weeks he played. He's coming off a bye. He's got a good matchup against a team that gives up a lot of points to tight ends. Let's talk about him.
Yeah, a sneaky one. Jatavian Sanders, JT Sanders, the rookie from Texas. Chiefs have given up the second most fantasy points to tight ends. Sanders had a touchdown in his last game, 4 catches for 87 yards in the game before that, and he's had a couple of other decent games since about mid-October. So only 2% rostered in Yahoo, widely available, and a guy you could play in a pinch.
I wish my name was Jotavian. That's a way cooler name than just Joseph. Just saying.
Here we go.
Much better. Maybe I can look into changing that. All right, D-Bro, I know you've been waiting all show to talk about this guy, so let's talk about him. Who's your tight end streamer for the week?
Well, this also comes with an apology letter. I'm sorry, Fitzy. Fitzy told me we should have had him in the waiver wire article. I pushed back. I went through the primer stuff, and I said, I texted Fitzy on the side, and I said, I am sorry. I apologize. I've done wrong. And I'm trying to correct this wrong. And I think people need to be aggressive on him. And I talked about it in the primer, and we saw what he did last week, and that's Will Dissly, man. 23% roster right now. You need to be streaming him this week, and you need to be streaming him for the next 3 weeks. Because it's not only just that he get a fantastic matchup against the Ravens this week. After that, he gets the Atlanta Falcons. And, look at that. We just talked about how good of a matchup the Chiefs are. And then Will Dissly gets the Chiefs. So a plug-and-play tight end 1 for the next 3 weeks. Pick him up and stream him.
All right, streaming defense for week 12, D-Bro.
Start any defense facing Cooper Rush. Who's on the schedule? Oh, yes, it's the Washington Commanders. Let's go.
Yeah, they could use a bounce back in the worst way. All right, Fitzy, give me a streaming defense for this week in the NFL.
I'll try to sell you on a team that has given up an average of 31.3 points over their last 6 games. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, simply because their next 3 games are against the Giants, the Panthers, and the Raiders.
How dare you dog out my paisan right in front of me, right in front of my face. The disrespect, Pat. The disrespect. It's unbelievable. All right, give me a kicker this week you want to play, Pat.
Spencer Schrader of the Chiefs. I can't tell you whether he's actually good at kicking, but he's only 5% rostered. He's tied to a great offense with the Chiefs. Well, not at least a very good offense, and going against the Panthers this week.
There you go. All right. How about you, D-Bro? Give me a kicker for this week.
How about you? I'm going to go Will Lutz.
How about your face?
Will Lutz. Broncos are going to be within range for a lot of field goal opportunities against the Raiders, so let's go.
By the way, speaking of kickers, Justin Tucker is done? Like,
what?
Depressing.
What?
I mean, I don't know.
Is he retiring? What?
No, I mean...
Can't make kicks anymore.
Yeah, McKick
Oh,
kicks. I mean,
dude.
how many kicks has he missed this year? Like,
More than a
I
few.
mean, and this was a big one.
Age clip comes for us all, my friend.
I know, but Justin Tucker has, again, probably Hall of Fame kicker, but there's been a couple this year too where he's just flat out missed. And then this was one of those big ones. And I had this feeling when I watched that missed kick, I'm like, this is going to haunt them later in this game because it's going to be one of those tight games. And sure enough, it did, man. All those people who keep taking Justin Tucker in football drafts, like 3 rounds before the last round. Like, what are you doing? Stop doing this. Why you keep doing this to yourself? Anyway.
Speaking of same vibes with Jake Elliott, man. Can't make
Well, yes, but one of these guys is like, I get it. I understood like 5 years ago why people would even consider it, but still bad fantasy. But still, I mean, Justin Tucker just does not look like himself anymore, and that's hurting the Ravens in these big spots. All right, let's go to the top 5 for the week. DBRO, start us off with the top 5 waiver ads in order.
So if QJ is out there, he's my number 1 ad of the week. Will Dissly is number 2. Elijah Moore 3. Jalen Coker 4. Christian Watson 5. This all comes down to the way that I'm approaching the waiver wire this week. With so many teams on bye, we need flex options. We need wide receiver 3s. That's why I built it this way.
All right, Fitzy, how about you? Top 5 for the week.
I have to go based on priority, what people are looking for. Everyone's looking for running backs. So Tank Bigsby, if he's available, is my number 1 just because of that nice schedule he's got in weeks 14 through 17. Quentin Johnston, number 2. Will Dissly, number 3. Bo Nix, number 4. Christian Watson, number 5. And Joe, I just want a guy who's sort of honorable mention I should throw out. We didn't mention him when we were talking about running backs, but Gus Edwards is pretty widely available. And now it seems like it's kind of a 60-40 split with Dobbins and Gus. And the Chargers offense suddenly looks like one of the better offenses in the NFL. They're going to have a lot of favorable run scripts. We know they like to run the ball. Like Gus is worth rostering.
We talked about him last week too. Edwards, Benson, and the needle didn't move at all. We said, hey, look, these are the guys to start setting aside here on your rosters if you can. Possible, flex week buy guys, but also insurance policies for the running backs ahead of them. And if you need more help on the waiver wire, don't forget, make sure you're using the waiver assistant over on My Playbook. Go to fantasypros.com/myplaybook or go to fantasypros.com. Sync your leagues for free. You can find My Playbook there. You can also find all of the waiver wire ranks for the week. And of course, all the write-ups that everybody's doing here. The gang has just a terrific coverage, and it's out before everybody else. So get the jump on the rest of your league mates. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.